In 1928, the New South Wales Commissioner of Police, James Mitchell, ordered every police officer in New South Wales to cancel their leave and all of them back to work. The reason he did this was because he was worried and terrified that there could be an extreme break in public order because the International Eucharistic Congress was being held in New South Wales. At the time, and when you look at the context of the era, maybe some of those concerns were justified because Sydney had a population of 250,000, yet more than 500,000 people had descended on the harbour city to celebrate, witnessing Christ. And what the Commissioner was worried about was the Protestant divide causing, riots or causing protests, to interrupt that Eucharistic procession. What it did bring, though, was an unprecedented act in New South Wales of unity. We saw the Protestant Prime Minister, Stanley Bruce, attend a service in St Mary's Cathedral. We also saw Sir Thomas Bevan, who was the Premier at the time, also a Protestant, speak at St Mary's Cathedral. Two things that had never happened before. So, fast forward nearly 100 years, and when you're looking at everything that's happening in society, what more important time to have Jesus Christ in our streets and in our hearts, which is why, not that reason alone, but there's many reasons why the Archbishop of Sydney in 2020 thought what could be more important than to try and bid and bring...
The Archdiocese of Sydney
we'll get to that in just a moment. The Archbishop of Sydney thought what could be more important than bringing the International Eucharistic Congress back to Australia, but also too, trying to strive and aim for 2028, which is 100 years since the first time it was in the Southern Hemisphere, when it was in Sydney last. So, like all good archbishops, when he has a fantastic idea, he needed to mobilise a team to make it happen, and it was our Bishop Richard Umbers, who's joining us today, who has been one of the key people instrumental in driving this, liaising with the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference. You would see, you've probably heard, it was endorsed at the plenary council for this bid to go in, and since then Bishop Richard has been traversing the country. He's also been traversing the globe, looking at the Eucharistic culture of other big Catholic nations, watching, learning, seeing what we can adopt, what we can bring back here. Just 2 months ago we were at the National Eucharistic Congress in the United States. I'll let Bishop talk, but last year he was in Spain, he was in Portugal, he's actually been to Ecuador, he's going back in a week. But he's worked really hard along with his office and his team to deliver on the Archbishop's vision, as endorsed by the Plenary Council. And what we'll ask all of you when you leave here today is Bishop Richard will no doubt deputise you all to spread this good news and hope that, pray that not only are we awarded the Congress in 2028, which we'll find out sometime in the next month, but also too that you'll help promote it, that you'll promote, advocate it, and get behind it so that once again, for that final Mass, we can see as many people as we did in 1928. So before I hand over to our Bishop here in Sydney, I just wanted to show you the first bid video that the Bishop took to Rome was at the start of 2023. At the start of 2023, so after the Plenary Council, and that was go forth, Bishop Richard, and try bid for this. This, and I'll let the Bishop talk more about it, but this was the video that he showed to the Council in Rome, where this whole journey began.
The Archdiocese of Sydney offers itself as the host of the International Eucharistic Congress in 2028 to celebrate our faith and affirm the love and joy of Christ in this part of the world. Australia, a nation home to the oldest continuous civilization on earth, a wide, great continent, embodied by the Holy Spirit, with its heart in Sydney, a city open to Christ on the streets.
To see so many people over here, obviously all with the same faith and here to celebrate Jesus.
And by having lots of young people volunteering and doing stuff like this, it's really great to It just helps us celebrate our faith in the wider community and bring everyone together.
Catholicism is the country's largest religion, with 1 in 5 Australians identify with our faith. Sydney is not only Australia's most religious city, it is also home to the country's mother church, St Mary's Cathedral.
We always wanted to make the trip in here just to show our solidarity with our fellow Catholics. It's one thing to just do our normal thing in our parishes, but to all come together and sort of worship in a common purpose with, the Archbishop and the Mother Church of Australia.
The Harbour City, the Emerald City, the luckiest city on earth. A multicultural melting pot home to people from more than 180 different nations, united by faith. Sydney has the knowledge, the infrastructure, and the natural beauty to host the greatest events on earth. Every year, its New Year's Eve is the envy of the world. The city delivers again and again. From the Olympics to World Youth Day, a memorable occasion where 500,000 Catholics gathered from around the globe. In 2028, the Catholic Archdiocese of Sydney hopes to host the International Eucharistic Congress, and that it will return to our shores. Celebrating 100 years since the first time the Congress was placed in Sydney's care. A different century, marking a different time.
Even just walking and hearing different accents from people, just showing our diversity in our faith.
The Eucharist is a hard thing to teach, but I think when you expose them from a young age to something that they can grow to love, hopefully, and walk with confidence with Jesus in their lives. Yeah, so lots of people, all ages. It's great to see lots of people with prayers and school students, elderly people of all walks. And there's so many people. So I think it's been a beautiful witness to the faith today.
50 years since the last time the Congress was held on the great southern continent, it is time to return and celebrate the truly universal presence of Jesus Christ as Prince of all nations. So we invite you to celebrate with us.
Quite funny with Sydney, I know it's very Sydney-centric, pushing Sydney. I was reminded of a time I was with some young fellows from Perth, and they were asking, what do you think about Perth? And I started saying, well, it's not bad. And I was saying, things that were a little bit on the nose. And I was sort of feeling a bit angry. And then they found out I was from New Zealand. And they go, oh, come on, it's nothing. Talking about Sydney. Well, I remember going to midnight mass, and generally there would always be a certain amount of singing that would just continue. Once mass is kind of finished. Because when you've had a bit to drink, it leads to a certain joy in the spirit. But I've noticed in more recent years that when we have midnight mass for Christmas, at the end of mass people kind of go, or they gather and talk outside. There's not the same amount of post-mass singing. And it's a bit of a shame. There are less drunk people around. But it's a kind of a, a bit more inclusive when you've got kind of everybody here. I did notice with relief at the end of COVID when I knew people had finally come back when mobile phones were going off and being answered during Mass. And I thought, okay, at last, everyone's back. But we're in a situation where we are moving from Christendom, where there's a kind of a general understanding of what the Christian faith is, to a time of apostolic mission. When I go on parish visitation now, I hear a lot, maybe it's because of my own roles, but I hear a lot from ordinary parishioners about evangelisation. People are keen to speak about Jesus and keen for Jesus to be known. That desire shows that when you are in Catholic events now, there is a real interest in sort of showing to people what Jesus means to us. And so people often talk about a prophetic moment. And I think we find in a situation in which we have so many opportunities, those of us who are a bit older, we grew up in an age when everything was always getting better. And to be fair, I mean, look at our standard of living, our travel, our technology, our medicine, you can go on and on and on, you know, all the wonderful things that we have. And yet, we find ourselves in a situation where so many young people are really challenged by the difficulties in mental health, where there's a kind of despondency in some ways about the future. And it's quite noticeable about those who are younger. I mean, what opportunities they have, and you can talk about trying to own a home or difficulties that come with even living in a city like Sydney. What is it then that we have to offer, which is true, but it is about life in Christ. There's an openness amongst so many now to know, well, but who is this Jesus? And for those that we have, then when we show our faith in different ways, and that's how I find with parishioners here in Sydney at least, there's a great willingness to go onto the street and to say, I believe in Jesus. And there's an interest and an openness to say, who is Jesus? Why are these people gathered? What is going on? Even we had the Corpus Christi procession this year. We had 15,000 people. It was a bit delayed in starting because we have a lot of people in the Hyde Park every Sunday on behalf of Palestine. And the police were still there, they were moving people on, and we were a bit delayed. The smoke detector went off again at Church Hill, too much incense and the thurible, that kind of thing. But some of my friends who were there on this, they could hear protesters talking to the police saying, what's this? What's this? And they'll say, oh, it's the Christians. What are they doing? I think they're marching for Jesus. And they were sort of, what's this march for Jesus? And then they were talking to the police. And did they pay for you to be here? Where's the money coming from? It's, oh no, we're here for you, but we're sort of holding on for them too. But it shows that people are sort of, Christianity that's for real. There are Christians. This is the thing. And what we've seen is that when people take part in these acts of popular piety, and I'll go through a few of the ones that we have in Sydney, it kind of snowballs in effect. We have our own personal media. And so people will post things on their Facebook, on their Instagram, and then cousins, sons-in-law, other people, they see what's going on and go, what's this? What are you doing? And they take an interest, and then they want to go the following year. And we've actually seen numbers build up in all these different kinds of public manifestations of faith. It's interesting because a more traditional, I guess, Celtic way of doing things is faith is very personal, and you keep it personal, private, whereas in our pews, we have people from many different parts of the world where the faith is very much a public display, and they're keen to show it. So I've been tapping into that a little bit in what we're doing. You will have seen also the work not only in people's own personal social media, but also many of you will have followed what has happened in Indianapolis. And it's through live streaming, it's through different media outlets that many people watch and take note. So in Indianapolis, there were like more than 50,000 people there. An incredible procession. Look, next time round, and I think they might do it again in 2033, we'll see, 2,000 years from the passion and death of our Lord and resurrection. But the way we do the Corpus Christi procession in Australia is a little different. In America, it was the first time they've done this in so many years. Now, it was very impressive, but you all will have noticed too that perhaps the local thing, they were there actually going, go bishops, go bishops, go. And it's like, I'm not quite sure that's quite according to the liturgy books. Or should it, but it was quite something. But people noticed. In fact, and there were priests in the diocese, and they knew, because one of the big masses, I was running a little bit late. I didn't allocate enough time to get to the stadium for it, so I went to one of the other, did a private mass instead. But there were priests in the Archdiocese, they were following very closely, and they noticed that I wasn't at that particular mass. But where were you? They go, how did they know? Well, they were following from, the other side of the world, but it was through the streaming. A lot of people following that. In the Archdiocese of Sydney, we have our own comms team, and they've been very active in making videos, in taking part, embedded in what's going on, and sharing that through the Catholic Weekly and on Facebook and in other ways. And that has contributed a lot to people going into real life, from online to a real life experience, which is what we always aim for in our media. It's not enough to sort of be there just somewhere in the cloud, but to actually engage with people, and it has helped so much in that regard. The Keynote of St. Joseph, this is a walk with men that we do overnight, visiting various churches, and priests get up out of bed, get up in the middle of the night, give a little fervorino, people pray, and then they move on and walk to the next church. It started with about 30 or 40 guys. This year we had, and Darren was there, one of the embedded people taking photos and all the rest that was there. They had a drone, always good to have a drone doing something. There were 600. I said mass for them, then I had to say goodbye because I was going to go off to my own little bed. Next year, I felt so embarrassed afterwards. I will actually march with them next year. I have to clear the weekend. But 600 fellows marching all night, and so many who have been on the margins, who don't go to church very often, have been taking part. And next year, please God, we'll make it really big. Close the roads. I think that's one lesson that we've learned from a lot of the processions. It's not just about being on the footpath, it's about being on the street, on the road, close it, and I'm sure we'll get many numbers. In preparations for World Youth Day in Portugal, we celebrated Our Lady of Fatima at the cathedral itself. We had with candles, and we had a procession at night. After Mass, it's very important, we always link everything in the first place to the Mass. The liturgy is always at the peak, the Eucharist is source and summit, but from the Mass afterwards we had a rosary and then the procession with candlelight, and we had so many, hundreds and hundreds of young people, families. We did it again this year. It was threatening rain, it was going to pour, but we still got 1,000 people thereabouts. And it was really beautiful. If you can see that, and the videos have helped a lot towards that. We look to do that again in the years to come. And these things will only grow, and they're done in a very, very beautiful way. One characteristic, I think, of Australians is we're not the people who question authority, we're the people who are very docile and follow instruction. That seems to be how we are as Australians. And so what that means is when we have these outpourings of popular piety, which when you see them in other countries, it's kind of a big jumble of people. In Australia, when it's organised, everyone is very docile, and they say, now you have to go to the left, and they all go to the left. Now you have to pray this prayer, and they pray that prayer. Now we sing this hymn, and they sing that hymn. But it means that you have, as an experience, something very uplifting. And when everyone is, you have that worship as a body, it's a really beautiful experience. We know that especially when Mass is sung well, and everyone is singing. And we had an experience of that too at the end of last year in the cathedral with more than 800 school kids on the Jubilate Deo program. Ron Riley and others had been teaching these kids through the year. They brought them all together. One of the girls from Bridgetine at Randwick was the conductor, and she had her classmates as a scholar. We had all the other kids singing. And it was quite something. They sang the Mass. They sang the whole Mass in the cathedral. It was so beautiful. At the parish level as well, we have been contributing towards that at Concord West for a canopy and various lamps that they could use, and that's something that then other parishes around can also use, so facilitating that worship for that parish and for the other parishes. Some private initiatives. There's a lady who likes a great devotion to Nuestra Señora del Buen Suceso. It's translated as a Lady of Good Success, but that's not a good translation from the Spanish, because suceso actually means a happening or an event. But that was out at Lidkim. It's an Equatorian devotion, and they had like up to 300-400 people take part just at a parish level the first time. There's a hunger for these things. So the idea that we might have an international Eucharistic Congress for Australia, Asia Pacific, but held in Sydney, is an opportunity to really give this sort of to build on what is already taking place in terms of giving a public witness. Because it leads to questions. People wonder, why are you doing this? Like, are you for real? What is this? And because many of the people who are present are just clearly ordinary people, it's an opportunity for people to see, that could be me. Like, I want to know what they're up to. What more can I do? I want to know about this because it's something living. It's something real. And popular piety has that appeal, that it is instantly recognizable. It is very much the wisdom of the people put there. Of course, it can lead to aspects which are not in keeping with the faith. And that's always, you get liturgical abuses, you get abuses in popular piety. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's perhaps not been as popular in the last 20 or 30 years or so. However, with this renewed focus, it's an opportunity, and the Plenary Council, in its decree on formation around the Eucharist, is an opportunity to, if we do this in a very intentional and deliberate way, help to direct that piety towards the liturgy. So that when we have adoration, for instance, it's always seen in its connection to the Mass. It's an extension. It comes from the Mass, leads us in continuing to look upon the Lord, to grow in hunger to receive the Lord in Holy Communion. You find then that because it's on the street, because people are there proclaiming the Word of God and they're walking together, so it's a very explicit form of synodality, that a lot of people feel included. Anyone can join in, and many do. And I've often found, as I said earlier, that you will have people there who have been a bit on the margins. But everyone feels that they can follow Jesus, that they can follow a statue of Mary, or one of the saints that we're lifting on our shoulders and saying, well, we're on the way to, you talk about being triumphalistic. Well, no, but we're sinners, but these saints have made it, and where they are, we hope to be. And so there's that idea of pilgrimage taking place in a very physical way. Alongside then these opportunities of what is traditional piety in many ways is the fact that we have technology, especially in Australia, especially in Sydney, with what we have available, and it's about bringing old and new together. So the way in which we undertake some of these popular processions, the way certainly in which they are advertised. I know our own youth team, they have a go when they advertise what they have to do. They put very funny videos onto TikTok. I have to confess, I enjoy TikTok for its own sake, so I'm always scrolling on it, seeing what's going on. But they do it in a way that gets people's attention, which is really what you're after. And it's a great opportunity it's really interesting, the mix of old and new, how that comes together. It doesn't always have to be about the old. You can have new and new as well. Part of this hoped for Eucharistic Congress is, and it's certainly trying to make it known. So the first question any of us will have is, what is an international Eucharistic Congress? Why? So those questions that are naturally brought forth when they see people on the street doing things. What is this? Even for ourselves too. But what is this? Why? I mean, I would be very interested. Please God, if they're saying the winner is Sydney and all the rest, then we would want to spend time unpacking that and helping explain to people, what is this? Why this universal concern brought to this local area? And yet, when it is in a local area, it has a global audience. looking at what's going on. And so it is very much a shared concern, which is what an International Eucharistic Congress is about. It's shared by all of us around the world in our faith in Jesus and the Eucharist, and what that might mean, and what we share across different liturgical rites. I've got a liturgist here, so if I'm using the right terms, I'll have to just defer. But across all of that, and so especially in a city like this, where you have people from the communities worshipping who are from all different parts of the world, they will be keyed in with their own neighbours and friends from the countries that they have come from. It will be a truly global phenomenon in proclaiming Jesus. So I was going back to with technology. One of the opportunities that we have to really promote in the city and beyond about this Eucharistic Congress and the catechesis that is required in the years of preparation is to use immersion experiences. You'll know Luna Park has now a place for immersion experiences. Many of you may have seen Van Gogh, there have been others. I'm trying to do that with the Sistine Chapel. So I would like to build the Sistine Chapel here in Sydney in some way with LED screens everywhere such that you are in the Sistine Chapel. And there would be a show, an immersion experience with Mary Magdalene, one of the holy women we have the triptych behind the Last Supper with Jesus, running onto the main screen, a bit out of breath, and then saying, have you heard, did you realise? I see you haven't. And then, as an apostle to the apostles, she starts to unpack different aspects of salvation history which you see in the Sistine Chapel following the order of the Easter Vigil. The climax would be that homily from Easter Saturday of the harrowing of hell with Jesus meeting Adam and Eve, such that you have an experience of what we understand by memory in the liturgy, where the great works of God are made present to us today. This is to arouse wonder and awe. Everyone loves to see the Sistine Chapel, but they would be left wondering, what is this mystical thing that I've been to? And hopefully, through school curriculum and through questions, they want to know more. What is the Mass? Because ultimately, I'd love for people to experience Sunday Mass, for people to come back to the Mass, to love the Mass, and the more you know, the more you can love. It's a scholastic dictum, but to arouse that wonder once more, and especially with kids. And if it is piloted in Sydney, it could then be taken to other dioceses in Australia. Very interested to see that. I have the intellectual property now to that. I have to sign a contract for this. I'm now in the process of production and raising money, which is no small deal. Kathy Campbell does all the work of all this, so it rests on her shoulders. But that's one of the things that we've been working on. But please God, I mean, if this comes off, and I really hope it will, then it's something that will create buzz. It's something I would want to see. I think it's something anyone would want to see. And then they'll say, well, what's this for? And in that way, you're able to talk about it's for an International Eucharistic Congress. Now, what is this? As a way of being able to really get the message out to people. You'll have seen in that video the Corpus Christi procession itself. Yes, in 1928 we had 500,000 people. I don't know that we're going to be working to that same order of magnitude for an International Eucharistic Congress, but we are building in Sydney that culture. The year of the Eucharist, 2005, Bishop Julian Porteous, an auxiliary bishop in Sydney at that time, started the Corpus Christi procession. Reignited that, and they would get between 3,000 to 6,000 people. In the last few years, we've really sort of ramped it up. Kathy's very practical and helped organise lots of buses for the parishes, and that played a very big role in more people being able to come, and such that the previous year, I think we had about 10,000. This year we had 15,000. Should we get the Eucharistic Congress, I think it will bring even more people, and I'd love to see our schools very involved. You can see a lot of banners there from parishes. We're going to see banners from the schools. It's an outpouring of popular devotion, and it's one of which people really enjoy themselves, but also they're moved. They're very moved. I think if we look to, well, where does it all come from? We have an origin story here in Sydney for the Eucharist. You'll have been to St. Patrick's Church Hill. You'll remember the story of Father Jeremiah O'Flynn, very stroppy Irish priest, fighting with everyone. He didn't discriminate. He fought with the bishops, he fought with the English, he fought with anyone in authority. He got mixed up in schism. He, you name it, he could probably have questionable English. He wouldn't get permission for anything, but he just went ahead and did stuff. He got arrested and then deported, but he left the Blessed Sacrament at the home of some early colonists, convicts, down at Church Hill, whether it was one house or the other house. It was around that area, the Dempsey or one of the others. But in 1840, when Paulding was erecting that church, he pointed to it. He said, look, here our faith was cradled, concealed, there its mysteries worshipped. So it was already pointed out as an important place. So in an era when the Mass was illegal, we weren't allowed to have priests, leaving the Blessed Sacrament there, people would gather and they would pray the Rosary, they would pray Vespers, they would do various acts of piety around the Blessed Sacrament, holding the community together. And it led to people in England and in Australia asking, we need priests. And a few years later, they gave in and they allowed those first two priests to come, including Father Terry, who's another character, to say the least. But that's how the faith started 200 years ago. So we have our origin story for the faith in Australia. One of the priests who spoke to me, I was in Adelaide last week speaking about this, and one of them said, well, every city has its own origin story. Melbourne has its origin story for when the first Mass was celebrated. I'm sure for amongst yourselves, you will have an idea in your own city. What was that story? I'd be really keen to know how the Blessed Sacrament was reserved, how the Mass was celebrated, where and when that happened in your own city. Because it would be good to be able to draw attention to that, I think. The Eucharistic Congress itself, its own origin, was in the 1880s. In France, there was a woman by the name of, no, I can't pronounce French, I'm sorry. My French teacher at school was a Kiwi, so. Something like Tamasier. I don't know if any of you know French, how you pronounce that, Madame Tamasier, but she was very concerned about the formation of priests, about the rise of secularism, and she would take people using the train, which was the technology of the time, to sites of miracles associated with the Eucharist. And in the end, she ended up having a congress. She invited other people around to join in that. It was very successful, and it continued from there. Through to 1928, when we had this, it was a really wonderful occasion. We had people from all around the world. You'll see, some of you, pictures from that time. In the cathedral house, and in different presbyteries, and I'm sure you may have seen these in some of your own chanceries, there are pictures of these bishops from 1928, sort of like the archbishops of that time. I don't know if you've seen that. It's quite striking, of the Cardinal Soretti, and then Archbishop of Adelaide, Archbishop of Sydney, even from the Bishop of Wellington, New Zealand, and they're all there. So it's something that has left a mark on people. There was a national conference in the early 50s here in Sydney, which many people, parishioners that I've met, still they remember as little children. That left a big mark on them, and some of the cardinals that had come from overseas, they still remember to this day. And of course in Melbourne in 1973, there was an International Eucharistic Congress. And with a display of the faith that was very much in keeping with the event of the Second Vatican Council. So that you can see that at the same time as you have these traditional outpourings of piety, it always takes place in the context of the ecclesiology of the time. And so it'll be interesting in our own time to see what that would look like in terms of our own struggle with secularism, our own desire to bring people back to a common worship after COVID at Sunday Mass, and how we might facilitate that. If we are so awarded this Eucharistic Congress, we would have years of preparation towards 2028, beginning in Corpus Christi next year. There would be a theme to each year. The overall theme for the conference is something that would be negotiated with Rome. I think we would prepare some suggestions, and then the Holy Father would choose one of those suggestions, and then that would set the scene for what we're doing. There would be any number of committees involved. We ran a youth festival. Adelaide had the youth festival. Melbourne has had theirs, Perth theirs. It's back in Melbourne. But when we ran the youth festival in Sydney, we had a structure, all sorts of people going on, strict committees. I imagine we had something similar to that. But there would also be a theological symposium in which you would have an academic unpacking of the theme of the Eucharistic Congress, and that would precede the week of the Congress itself, in which you would have masses and all the different rites, also different expressions in the churches across Sydney. And there would be a large Eucharistic procession, and then a final Mass on the Sunday with the Statio Orbis, with either the Pope or the Pope's delegate. One hopes the Pope. But that would be quite something. But there would be need then for missionary delegates all around to be in touch, to be following that progress, and to be reporting to people about that. I went on tour earlier this year around Australia to talk about the Eucharistic Congress in Ecuador, which I'm attending now. I'm the delegate for the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference. I'm also, because they were piggybacking off this, the delegate for the New Zealand Bishops' Conference. It's quite interesting as a quasi. I was also the delegate for Hungary, but I was not able to attend because of COVID. We weren't allowed to leave the country. But I did visit Bishop Cornell there and saw what they did in Hungary. Fascinating. They even had all sorts of endeavours. They really got the city on board. They got the country on board. They were connected to major figures in sport, in the arts, politicians. They had a lot of cultural events. They had a cake baking competition. It seemed to 3 minutes to go. All right, very good. They had a wine of the conference. I'm sure there'll be a good South Australian wine. That might be an official wine or something. We'll have to see whether Hunter Valley or Margaret River has to compete. But I'm sure there'll be those sorts of aspects to really draw everyone in. I'd be very keen to work with Tourism New South Wales and what they might be of interest to them in terms of showcasing Sydney, because there will be such reach from our comms and from different streaming services to bring people even into regional Australia and to see different parts of Australia too associated with that. So there's a lot of overlap of interests from the government itself, I would hope, and from ourselves, so that we can really showcase the faith in Australia, reaching the Asia-Pacific region especially. And I'd be very interested to know, you may have some suggestions for me later, what that might look like in terms of other parts of Australia, and what that might look like for other parts for our communities here in reaching into the Asia-Pacific region. And at that, I will wrap up and open for a bit of Q&A.